Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for From Chaos to Control, Mastering Facility Emergency Response, presented by Rob Myers and Dan Richards and brought to you by IFMA's Corporate Facilities Council. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and you are muted to prevent background noise during the presentation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the questions box, and if time permits, Rob and Dan will answer questions at the end of the presentation. I now turn you over to Dexter Barrow, the Programs Committee Chair for the Corporate Facilities Council.
Thank you, Kylie, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning for some, this afternoon for others. I'm looking forward to a wonderful webinar today. We'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors, Castle Systems and Tersano, who help us to bring this amazing content to you. And also I'd like to give a big shout out to Wayne Weitzel for being a champion of the CFC. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rob Myers. With over 30 years of construction and mitigation expertise, Rob, who joined Ideal in 2020, brings a wealth of practical knowledge, highlighted by his global disaster response leadership, followed by multiple national catastrophic weather events. As a lead trainer, he empowers property operators, school districts, and construction organizations with critical safety and maintenance skills, backed by extensive certifications in asbestos, lead, and mold remediation, ensuring safe and efficient environments. Just a little fun fact that I'll let Rob expound on is that at some point in his career, he pulled two pools out of he lifted two pools out of the ground. I'll let him explain that to you. I don't know if he lifted those with his arms or how it happened, about a foot out of the ground, but I'll let him share a little bit about that with you. I would also like to introduce Dan Richards. Dan Richards, who is an FMP, brings 16 years of expertise in rapid property damage recovery, empowering facility managers to minimize downtime. His training focuses on practical strategies for navigating building emergencies, proven through his success in reducing project durations by over 50% for major organizations and ensuring swift occupant return and uninterrupted operations. We're lucky to have Dan with us. He's a new dad and is working days and nights, as all of us know what a new dad does. So he's working with very little sleep. So we'll look forward to this presentation. Gentlemen, you can take it away.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dexter. Rob, love to hear the story, if you don't mind just sharing.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Early in my career as a facilities property manager and residential side, I was working in Palo Alto. Literally first week on the job as the manager for that complex, a very large residential complex in Palo Alto near Stanford. We had cracks in two of our commercial swimming pools on the property. And I was asked, priority number one, get those ready for the summer. So I brought in some pool repair people, and they were scuba divers. They couldn't fix them with water in the pool. The guy said, you just need to drain the pools, and we'll come back in a couple days and take care of it. Well, I didn't think there was anything more to it than drain the pools. I went to Orchard Supply or Home Depot. I bought 2 sump pumps and some hoses. I threw them in the pool overnight, and I woke up. This was literally my third day on the job, to my residents pounding on my door. And if you don't know, when a pool's been in the ground that long and the counterbalance of pressure in the ground, if you don't drill a hole in the bottom of the pool about 6 inches in diameter to let that pressure and mud out, I woke up to 2 commercial-sized swimming pools, 18 inches completely out of the ground. And I mean the coping, the brick, the deck work. Yeah, day 2 or day 3 of the job, I think I caused almost $600,000 in damage to the property. So that's one of those lessons you get to tell throughout your career. But I still remember that morning and walking outside and what those pools look like. So if you've ever made that mistake, you know. Otherwise, never drain a pool without cutting a hole in the bottom.
I was thinking your colleagues are probably telling that story too. Let me tell you about what this guy did. I appreciate it, Rob. Yeah, and as Dexter mentioned, I'm a new dad, surviving on caffeine and caffeine pills, getting about 4 to 5 hours sleep a day. And, I promise I'm not going to fall asleep at any time. So very excited to be able to be in front of you. This is going to be a very interactive presentation. So I invite you to join us at slido.com. You can also take out your phone and scan the QR code. This is going to be very interactive. So we're going to have active polls. We're going to have some questions on there. And we'd definitely love to hear from you. So some of the things we're going to be going over is, number one, why does this matter? Chaos to control, what is this going to be presenting about? What am I going to be talking to you? How am I going to make the best use of your time? And why should you care about this training? So I'll definitely be going over that for the first part. What facility managers should have in place before an emergency response playbook. So we're going to be talking about how, I'm not going to use too many sports analogies, but as we know, the best sports team follow their playbook, and the playbook leads them to success. So we'll be talking a little bit more about how to have a playbook for emergency response, managing property damage events in multiple geographies. And this is where Rob's going to be taking the lead and talking to you further about that. He's going to also be covering what facility managers should expect from a recovery company. So whether you're using a recovery company or not, there's some basic rules that they should be following, as well as just basic things they should be providing to you on a daily basis as they work with you. And he's going to wrap up with how to avoid bad vendors and costly mistakes, and then we'll have a question and answering. So I know that we are going to be going over quite a few topics, so I would love to hear from you. If you go to the active poll, if there's anything in particular that you'd like to hear more about. If that is the case, please vote. And I'm able to see a live screen here, so I can see what people are picking on. Looks like we have a couple participants that are ranking what they would like to hear about. And again, you can join us this active poll on slido.com. You can enter in the code, or you can just scan the QR code. Great. Leave that open for the next 30 seconds. Each time we do this, Rob and I never have a split down the middle of everyone wants to hear everything. It's usually one thing or the other, so I'd love to just hear about that before we start. All right, so we'll definitely be focusing on what facility managers should have in place before an emergency. Emergency response playbook we'll definitely be covering. And I'm going to maybe go quickly in some areas. In some areas, I'm not. Definitely, you'll have my contact information. So if you have any further questions about what I went over, you could get in contact with me. If you're ever curious about, hey, what other companies are doing, what does their response playbook look like? I'm happy to provide more information. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Well, first thing I'd love to hear about is, what is your biggest challenge in managing emergencies? So facility managers in the room, or those that deal with property damage emergencies and they're responsible for recovery, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have in just managing this? We have delayed decision-making, vendor accountability, poor communication, okay. I'm gonna leave that open for another 30 seconds. Rob, when it comes to your part, looks like focus on delayed decision-making and vendor accountability will be the first or two things that you can be covering. During the playbook, I'll definitely be covering delayed decision-making on the client side as well and how to speed that up. All right, we'll leave that open for 30 seconds. All right, appreciate it. I'll definitely be going over this. So why does this matter? Again, I have you for 45 to an hour. Why are we here today? Well, those who are facility managers, this is what's called an FM mind map. This is a view of everything that facility managers does on a weekly or daily, monthly basis. Everything from maintenance, cleaning, support services, management, property projects, interior designs, property transactions, corporate social responsibilities, and there's a lot more that I'm not even covering. And when it comes to disaster preparedness or dealing with an emergency response, here's just a small section around that. And so when things like this occurs, whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., it's catastrophic, because not only you have to drop everything and deal with this type of emergency, but you still are responsible for everything else that you have to do on a regular basis. And so when it comes to dealing with the property damage emergency and there's no plan of action, we can imagine you're pretty stressed out, because again, you weren't expecting this. And it could be Friday, 4 p.m., and you're trying to wrap the day up, or it could be Monday, 8 a.m. And if you haven't gone through this exercise on how to deal with the property damage emergency, things are going to be stressful. Your team's also going to be confused on who to call. There's going to be a delayed response from them. They're going to be calling you. They could be calling you on vacation hours saying, hey, Dexter, we got this emergency. What do we do? And so the problem is that no one knows what's first steps to take. Time is wasted. And when time is wasted, the damage is still there. In fact, things are getting more destructive as time is going on, because no one can't make a decision. And sometimes this causes panic. And when panic sets in, they're often making decisions that aren't the best one. The company that you may call could be just from a phone book, because I don't know who to call. So I'm just going to call someone that I see on the phone book, or I'm going to call someone that I saw in the commercial. And this could be tricky, because they're going to ask you 1,000 questions. You're going to have to give them the answers to. But oftentimes they're going to tell you, hey, we'll show up when we show up. We'll be there today. Or if you're lucky, they'll say, hey, we'll be there in 90 minutes to help you out. But still, you're stressed because you don't know what to expect. And so when it comes to people asking you, hey, what's happening? What's going to happen? How are we going to recover from this? You don't really know what to say to them, because you haven't dealt with it before, or you just don't know what the process is like dealing with this company. And you have to wait for them to tell you. Delays in decision-making often sets in as well if there's no plan of action beforehand. So do we remove the drywall? Do we remove the building materials or not? Can we? Sometimes those decisions can take 2 to 3 days. And when it's 2 to 3 days, there's still downtime. People are still waiting to get inside their office or their area to work. And so they're often hounding you of, hey, Bob, what's going on? When can I get back to work? I'm tired of working from home. I have a newborn and I can't get anything done. And so you can also get stressed out by just dealing with that. And by the way, your boss is still asking you for the reports that are due, because just because there's a property damage emergency, he's still looking for those TPS reports. It's date night. You promised your partner, hey, today it's Wednesday. We're going to go out to the movies, go out to the restaurant. And Wednesday occurs and there's property damage. Sometimes you're going to be late for that. And we know that your partners won't let you down or off the hook. And then when you go back or when you go home and you sleep, you're going to be worrying about tomorrow, of all the things you're going to have to be doing. What's going to happen? How, is the recovery company really going to follow through and provide everything to me that they said they're going to do? How am I going to get the day done with all the other tasks that I have to do, and then still take care of this property damage emergency? So this is what happens when you just don't have a plan of action. Now, this is what it looks like to being prepared and having a plan of action. Having a process and working with the right partners can make all the difference in the recovery event. A well-prepared facility manager is like a superhero that pretty much saves the day. And they prevent unnecessary damage, and they save time, and they save money. They come in and say, this is exactly what needs to get done. I have a company. They're going to be coming in. They're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. And that's really what separates a 3 to 5 day recovery project from a 7 to 14 day recovery projects. When you're prepared, you have the right processes in place, and you're working with the right partners. So through our experience in working with clients, new clients, whether it's property managers from high rise, or it could be property managers, facility managers for tech industries, for life sciences, for banks, we found that those that don't have a plan of action, they don't have a process, they typically are spending 20 to 50% more on the recovery, because again, they're not prepared, and preparedness leads to delays. Lack of preparedness leads to delays. It leads to overcharges, as well as leads to mismanaged vendors relationship. And so the vendor will take advantage of you if you don't ask the right questions. And so Again, having a process in place, being prepared yourself, knowing what to expect, what you should expect from a recovery company, as Rob's going to be going over later. It's going to help you just to call things out. Hey, you should be doing this. Why isn't this done? And this is all in the line of getting people back into their facility. So what should FMs have in place to begin with before an emergency occurs? Not when an emergency occurs, but what should they have in place beforehand? Well, one, a risk prevention program. And this really helps you to be prepared and put prevention first. And this just goes beyond just knowing what your high risk locations are, like your server rooms or your labs, or scheduling repair inspections and plumbing for HVAC and drainage. This is about learning from the past. What has occurred in the past at this location? How was it handled? How quickly was the problem resolved? What went well? What didn't go well? And this is all about improving your future response when those things occur again, because likely they are. It's not if you're going to have a property damage emergency at this building, it's really all about when. So you want to look at the past, because that's really going to set the foot forward, the best foot forward. So the next time it does occur, you know exactly what needs to be done. This also helps you prevent the damage or the area from being damaged again. And so if you know that it was caused by A, B, and C, well, let's make sure we look at A, B, and C on a monthly or quarterly basis to ensure it doesn't happen again. This also helps you to understand what you can do in-house versus external vendors. A lot of times when you look at the past, you can say, hey, our janitorial team could have responded a lot faster if they would have known about it sooner. So let's make sure that when it comes to these type of emergencies, we call them right away instead of waiting. Also helps you to know what you can do internally too. Maybe your facility managers have equipment, or if they don't, they purchase equipment in order to stop the damage from spreading. This also helps you from lab contingency for your lab spaces, knowing what's the plan for moving this high value item. It could be $1 million rat that your occupant is studying on. Where do we place them when their area is damaged? What is that plan B? And so knowing exactly, hey, if this area were to be impacted, we know we can just go ahead and move them into this spot so they can keep their studies going. When it comes to storm monitoring, if you have a large storm coming in, this also helps you plan on who's going to be doing the monitoring of the property on an hourly or daily basis, especially if you have any buildings that are unoccupied. A lot of times we work with clients that say, hey, we came in Monday and there's water everywhere on the first floor. We didn't know about it all weekend. And there was a large storm that occurred. So having a plan of action for that also really helps too. Surprisingly, I still meet a lot of companies that don't have a set of vendors on contracts. They say, hey, I haven't had the time, or we haven't had the need yet. I'll just go through it when I need to go through it. This doesn't really help to ensure that you have a fast, reliable response system. Even though it's not regularly needed, the service may not be regularly needed, having pre-established vendors agreements ensure a fast, reliable response. It also puts expectations in place for the vendor to follow. So with your service agreements, make sure you have a well-defined SLA when it comes to response time expectation. What are some of the deliverables that you're expecting from them? And also put in some repercussion for non-performance. So if they don't respond with it in this time, or they don't provide you with these reporting in a timely fashion, or get the job done completed in this set of time that you set, you can actually have them pay you for not performing. This also helps, having pre-vetted vendors in place also helps that last minute search when it comes to 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. You know exactly who to call. You know who to call, what number to follow, you know who to speak to. This helps you again to reduce some of the stress. We'll be going over the response playbook, so I'll skip this, but the very first thing I will say is that the first 10 minutes matter. And so the playbook's going to really help you to have some things in place on what you need to do in the first 10 minutes of an emergency. Emergency response supplies is something that you should also have in place as well. So a lot of the times when we're working with folks, having containment measures in place really helps. So it could be flood sacks, it could be absorbent socks, anything that could prevent water from going from one room to the other. It could also be dehumidifiers or extraction units. A lot of times when we work with facility managers, they don't know how to check to see if the wall's wet. And so we would recommend purchasing this as well. Moisture meters are very valuable and we'll give you the answer. A lot of times we come in and we talk to the facility manager because they say, hey, there's a problem, but hey, it's okay. I felt the wall. It feels dry. But when it comes to using a moisture meter, it's not. It's heavily impacted by water. Just having a moisture meter can just save time and money, as well as helps you to make decisions faster as well. Having PPE supplies is also really good too. So when it comes to sewage backup, your facility managers aren't walking in with just their shoes and the regular clothes. They actually are being protected. So safety is definitely paramount. Recovery training as well. So a lot of times, in fact, we're still doing them today. We help facility managers do the work themselves when they can. If it's small enough, they can do the work themselves without needing to really call us. And so we facilitate facility managers, property managers, maintenance managers on how to conduct work themselves without needing a recovery company. And this reduces their costs as well as just reduces the time as well. And so some of the trainings that we do offer them is water damage recovery as well as hazardous material cleanup. And when we see companies implement this in place, they usually save around $80,000 depending on how often they need to call us. But we have affordable housing companies that are very thankful for our partnership, because when it comes to just a small 1-unit bathroom overflow, not really much damage, they don't have to call us, and they're just saving costs on that. So just out of curiosity, who has a defined first 10-minute response playbook for each team member? I got a couple of people say yes, no. Well, it's definitely something to consider. Again, talking about sports, I'm not a sports fan at all, so I'm not going to start using analogies at all, but I know that when it comes to a sports team, the coaches are following the playbook that they really put together in order for their team to win. And so they're following it, and they're having their teams follow it. Any type of plays that come up, they're looking at their playbook. And this really enhances communication across the team. When we jump back to facility managers, it reduces response time of approvals as well. It speeds up the recovery process, and it really kind of clarifies the roles and responsibility of your team members. Each team member has a spot on the team, and they can be a valuable resource in conducting certain duties to maybe reduce your workload, but just ensure that overall this project gets done faster. And we're going to be going over that in a little bit. So what goes into a playbook? Well, having incident categorization, defining priorities and expectations are very helpful. If everything is a priority 1 emergency, nothing's a priority 1 emergency. And so you internally as a team should be defining what constitutes as priority 1, what's a priority 2, what's a priority 3. And if we identify that it's a priority 1 event, what are some of the action items that we need to make sure that are being followed? And same thing for 2 and 3. Again, for the immediate actions part, what happens in the first 10 minutes of a P1, 2, or 3 emergency really does make the world of a difference. And so some of the, you defining that is going to be very helpful for your team members. And some of the things that should be included in the action plan of a P1, 2, or 3 emergencies, safety, could be like fixing hazardous areas of electrical. Let's say if you walk in and you notice that it could be electrical hazard, well, make sure you block off the space. It could be also stopping the problem. If you notice that there's water trickle in from a broken pipe, knowing where to shut off the water is paramount. You should know where to shut off the water and maybe some isolated shut-off points now. So when it comes to an emergency, you're not scrambling trying to figure it out, because again, that wastes time. And also it limits the damage as well. And so when you know exactly where to shut off the water, or you know where to go into your supplies to get maybe the flood sacks or barriers or containment, it's going to help contain water damage to that one specific area. What about team members? When it comes to P1, 2, or 3, do we notify everybody? Or are there specific team members that we notify for each type of priority incident? When do we call a vendor? Do we call a vendor on just a P3, P2, or P1 emergency? Again, that's going to make it easier for your team to make a decision. If they know it's a P3, we're not going to call a vendor yet because we're going to go ahead and examine it ourselves. Or, hey, it's a P1 emergency, we're calling a vendor right now. We know exactly who to call. And so again, having this type of this defined is really going to help you just to know what to do in advance and not need to figure out what to do at 2 a.m. Let's see here. I'm having some technical difficulties. All right, roles and responsibilities. Who does what and by when to increase rapid recovery? This could be the same person or it could be not. So some of the roles that we see at other organizations could be the role of an incident response lead. This is the person that is in charge of this type of property damage event. They're going to stick to that project. They're not going to leave that project. They're going to ensure that things are being followed. So who's going to be overseeing the property damage recovery is very important to make sure that your team members know, okay, responsibility relies on you, so you take care of it. Sometimes we see people are pointing the fingers. I don't know, Bob's supposed to be making the decision. They're going to be doing this. It just causes confusion. So knowing that in advance is very important. Who's going to oversee the external vendors and calling them out? Again, it could be the same person or it could be not. At the end of the day, really what this is all about is just making sure that everyone on the team, they know what to do. They know what to do in advance, and they're not waiting until an emergency to ask, hey, what do I do? How can I help? A lot of times what we see with organizations, they'll do tabletop exercises. They'll say, hey, let's draw up a scenario. There's a sprinkler head that gets discharged into a server room. What do we do? Those type of tabletop exercises done on a monthly basis is really going to help your team react faster. And also it's going to reduce their stress because they know what to do. They don't have to stress out. They've gone through this process before and they know who to call. They know what to expect. They know what their roles and responsibilities are, etc. I'm just having a fun time with this clicker. Okay, communication plan. Who do you keep informed? Again, do you inform everybody? Who informs the user space of the office where their office has been impacted? Who informs them? Sometimes we hear about people coming back to work and they go to their desk and their desk is destroyed by whatever. And they get pretty bummed out. In fact, it kind of reduces satisfaction of their facility management team. Oh, I wish someone told me. I would have worked from home. Who is being notified when it comes to progress updates? Who gets notified to make approvals? Again, having a plan of action on the communication front is really just going to help people hounding you for information. And it's going to help you just include people that need to be included. Some of the, one quick thing I forgot to mention, when it comes to user spaces that are being impacted, some successes that we're seeing from other organizations is that they have a template ready to go. So if they know that desk space number 142 is being impacted, they can't come to work for the next 3 days. They have a template that's been approved by management to share with that individual. And this is, again, all about just increasing your client satisfaction. Okay. I don't know what's up with this. My apologies. All right, documentation, submittal milestones. Part of the playbook is knowing again, what do we need to expect and by when? So some of the documents that should be captured in a timely manner is, for example, moisture maps, photos, work authorization forms. And that's just to ensure that everyone is up to date and there's an approval process. Impacts assessment reports. You should have written in the playbook on what to expect from a vendor, or what information that you need to provide to your management team or just team members in general. This again just helps making sure that people keep informed, but you also capture all the things that you need to capture in order to maybe get this claim processed by your insurance. All right. Well, now we're going to go ahead and jump over to Rob. He's going to be talking about managing events, multiple geographies.
Thanks, Dan. You know, I was going to say, Dan, you know that slide that you put up for those of you that are FMs here, and you saw that slide with all those responsibilities. I don't know if at your company you're required to do your annual self-evaluations, but I might recommend printing that sheet out and just turn that into your boss. Here's what I had to do this year. You can read all 700 things on that list that I take care of for the company. I didn't tell you to do that, but just throwing that out there. Okay, so Dan basically was talking about, you know, what things can we do to be prepared, the emergency playbook. I've got a template that I can share at the very end if we have time, just so you can look at a few slides of what an emergency response plan looks like. The playbook's a little bit different. The playbook's going to be internal, so your team knows what to do. And the response plan is also can be set up by property so that your restorer, you know, knows what to do. You've got an accountant, you've got an attorney, you've got someone that does your hair, you've got maybe someone that takes care of your landscaping. Do you have a guy or a lady for that, right? Like, as restorers, we want all of our clients to know that, oh yeah, I have a person for that. I have somebody on my phone that I can call for mold, sewage, water, fire, asbestos, lead, personal or otherwise, whether it's work related. So, you know, ultimately we want you to understand that you want to have a real true partnership with whoever your restoration company is. So we're going to cover a couple quick things on choosing that restorer and what facility managers should expect and what some common pitfalls are. I'll be using some foul language like change order, delayed, stuff that I know all you FMs are really excited about, especially at the end of a job. But, you know, we'll jump right in here with managing events in multiple geographies. So for us, yeah, Dan, I'm having the same issue upstairs. I can't share right now, Dan. I can't change this.
Okay, I'll be right up.
You want to jump back and take over, and I'll go through the slides? I'm having the same issue here. Sorry about that, folks. Don't want to be clunky here. Kylie, can you? Yeah. Okay, so we are in the San Francisco Bay Area. For those of you and across the country, I know we have visitors. You know, we've got different subclimates. We've got a lot of different areas inside the Bay, outside at the Pacific Ocean where it meets San Francisco. This is kind of a layout of the San Francisco Bay Area. There's two parts to managing your geography, and for us, or if you're in a large city area, it's probably not so much in rurals. You know, I lived in Kansas for a few years, in Ottawa, Kansas. There wasn't much going on besides the high school and maybe a hotel. But, you know, we've been in San Francisco for 52 years, so we work in a very densely populated area most of the time. There's two parts of this geography. One, know your residents and your tenants. Okay, so like if we're working in Chinatown in San Francisco, or we're working in Japantown, or we're working in different areas where there's cultural differences or a cultural population, one of the things that's very difficult, we just finished a huge condo high-rise project, water damage from the 10th floor down to the basement in San Francisco, in a Chinese community building. And there were, I think, half a dozen or a dozen different dialects being spoken in the building. If you're in an area where you're going to run into these types of things, it's important that we have translators. Most insurance companies and carriers will also support that. Sometimes we have to have multiple translators in the building. Often the client can supply that for us, but if not, be aware that if you have particular buildings that you manage that may need that in a time of emergency, if you've got to talk to 40 different, you know, condo owners and in multiple dialects, it's a good idea to have somebody on site that can help navigate those waters with you. So that's one thing, being able to address your audience in a timely fashion, especially if you're dealing with people that have to make decisions in their own individual units. The other thing is actually physical geography. like I said, we've got multiple different subclimates here in the Bay Area. Around San Francisco, we suffer from something called king tides several times a year here when the bay water comes up 10, 12 feet. And when those king tides come in, normally we only get 24 hours notice. But some of our folks, even in South San Francisco, all around SFO, if anyone's flown into the Bay Area and you've been to San Francisco Airport, you know our airport sits right on the bay. So this particular shot right here is of a life science building, one of our clients that's in South San Francisco. This is literally a half a mile off the bay. But when those king tides come in and breach that levee, even with San Francisco has special gates that they put up for that. Dan's going to show you a quick video of us arriving on site. It's only 10 or 12 seconds, 13-second video, but we're in the middle of downtown. You should not have a foot of standing water. And actually in this building, the water level went to 4 feet high on the initial response. This is several hours after we get there, but physical locations could change from property to property. So if you've got a bunch of buildings that sit up on a hill somewhere and you don't have any worries about them getting groundwater or rainwater, it's fine. But please be aware that if you do have those locations, you might need to have separate emergency response plans for each one of those type of properties and also based on those locations. You should be able to identify those vulnerabilities and you should have stuff in place for those areas. What we currently do is we have multiple pallets of sandbags that we have had delivered to our client, and they keep them in their warehouse for our use and their use when this happens. But now we can just show up on site and start sandbagging doors. These flood barriers you see here, super sturdy. They run anywhere from $140 to about $200 each, depending on the size you're getting. They work incredibly well at holding back flash flood waters. Dan, I put one more slide in there with just some wattles that you had earlier. Maybe it didn't. Oh, sorry, you're working off yours. Yeah, there you go. So, wattles are a great thing. If you can have those stored in your warehouse, something like that, that's just redirecting water. It's not going to stop all flow, but it is going to redirect water. It's important that you know what buildings are going to be impacted like that so you can get ahead of that. We have multiple clients in Union Square. If you're familiar, again, I'm going to be referring to real jobs here in the Bay Area so you know what our experience has been. But Union Square is a very big tourist shopping area, and there's everyone from Armani Exchange to Tiffany & Company and a lot of high-end stores in Union Square. They happen to sit at the bottom of a lot of these hills that you've seen on the news in San Francisco. It's a hilly city. But when they have floods in San Francisco and those city sewers back up, those areas are highly impacted. And if you don't know which one of your residents may be impacted or basements filled up with water and you're not prepared for that, it becomes hugely problematic. One of the things we also encourage is you should be able to categorize what different tenants and residents you have in your buildings, especially in commercial spaces. And I'm going to use Tiffany & Company as a reference because they're a long-term client of ours, but Tiffany & Company, the jeweler, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that name. They have a store in Union Square, and there happens to be a couple other high-end stores near them, and then there's a pizza place on the opposite corner. Well, when they were flooded due to heavy rains or city sewer backups because they can't handle the water, and that pizza place goes offline for a couple of days, not that big of a deal. Business interruption costs, as you know, as facility managers, that's a big deal. When a company has to come offline, business interruption costs can be as problematic as the damage to the building. In the case of someone like Tiffany & Company, that store in San Francisco, their average is $282,000 a day in retail sales. So they're selling almost $250,000 to $350,000 every single day out of that store. When they have a major flood and that store comes offline, if they're offline for a week, you're talking several $1 million in business interruption costs. How does that translate to you being able to respond properly? You should know that about all of your tenants. If that's a situation that you're going to run into, Tiffany & Company wants 32 people in that store 24 hours a day until they're back online. And it doesn't matter if it's overtime, double time, triple time, because they're losing $300,000 a day and the insurance carrier is going to end up covering that. So just things to consider when you're looking at your different buildings. It's not just the building to consider. What other tenants may be offline and how do you want to tailor your responses to accommodate those types of situations? I can put two guys in the pizza place because they're doing, $4,500 a day and they're okay taking a couple of days off. You should know that. And again, be able to respond in time. That way you're not having your tenants get upset and try to do things on their own where they start calling in their own vendors. That can be hugely problematic as well. Okay, anyway, know your vulnerabilities. Walk your perimeters. Dan mentioned that earlier. You should be walking these buildings multiple times during the day, especially if you have weather systems coming in or you've had a situation in there. Water might not show up for several hours, sometimes a day. If it's going through ceilings and walls, sometimes water is going to present itself in new locations you didn't see on day one. So making sure you continue to monitor that and keep your restore up to date with what is going on in the building. Emergency response binder, we talked a little about that. I'll show a picture of that in a little bit. Okay, so moving quickly on to common pitfalls with restoration companies. Couple things to look out for, and how do you know? So the bait and switch. I think anybody with some time in facilities management is probably familiar with the bait and switch. If you don't know what that is, it can be done one of two ways. It can be a dishonest situation, or it can be well, I think they're all dishonest unless something's actually found in a discovery. If I'm opening up a wall and we discover something that there should be no reason that's there, that's a legitimate reason to have a change order, and I think everybody on staff can appreciate that. The problem we run into, and we hear mostly from clients that are switching over to using a different company, or we do these training seminars and people raise their hand and tell us their horror stories. Your client or you as a FM might not know a lot of the things that you're going to run into. If you say, well, you know what, we found out we've had a pipe leaking for a month in this wall, and we need to get a quote to open up this wall, right? If you're a professional restorer, you should anticipate if that wall's been wet for a month, you're going to have microbial issues. You're going to have possible odor issues. You're going to have, if it's a sewage back or anything else like that, you're going to have other serious problems that are going to affect the job. But what we find happen is someone will say, I need you to open up this wall. So they'll go and they'll bid the job, $2,000 to open up this wall. Then they'll get two other restorers that'll come in there and bid that project and say, well, you got to open up the wall. First of all, we're going to need negative pressure. We're going to need a containment set up because it's been wet for at least a month. We're going to have mold. So someone else writes a bid for $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. And this is a very common occurrence. If you haven't experienced it, good for you. But if you have, you know that some people on these calls or these webinars start to relive those emotions and get furious about past jobs. You hire a contractor that says, well, I'm doing it for $2,000. And you're like, tell your boss, well, everybody else was 10, this guy was 2, and we went ahead and went with him. Then they open up the wall, no containment. Now they've exposed it to mold or asbestos or lead. Didn't take into consideration what they're going to run into. 3 change orders later, now you're at $16,000, $17,000, $18,000. And had you gone with the $10,000 or $12,000 contractor, you might not have that situation. That happens all the time. If you've been a victim of that bait and switch where, then the contractor will tell you, well, hey, you asked me to open up the wall. That's what I bid. $2,000 to open the wall. You didn't say anything else. Well, I expect you as a professional restorer that you should know what you should anticipate or what might be in that wall and take account for that, or at least give me a heads up. There's nothing worse than having to go back to your boss or your team and say, well, I picked a $2,000 guy, but it ends up being $20,000. Now we have to go get funds reallocated. If you're on an insurance claim, they've already set reserves. Now you've got upset adjusters, you've got upset carriers. Try to avoid that bait and switch. An easy way to do that is ask questions. Dan's made the suggestion to our clients several times that we can do mock responses. Have a mock set up where you say, we'd like you to come into the facility, pretend this wall's wet. We want to see how it works, how we'd be working with you, and get them to give you some details. When you get an estimate from someone, everybody gets 3 estimates on the desk. They go to the last page. Okay, $10,000, $8,000, $7,000. You should compare apples to apples and make sure that folks are all bidding the same thing. And if not, feel free to ask those questions. You should never be intimidated or felt less than because your restorer comes in and talks a big game about mold or asbestos or lead or things that you may not be as familiar with. And you're like, well, they have a lot of big words they're using and talking about stuff. Sounds like they know what they're doing. Feel free to ask questions. It's your money. It's your facility. If you're not comfortable, you think there's something shady going on, there might be. Trust your sixth sense on those things too, and make sure that you feel that you're having an open and transparent dialogue with whoever that client is. Require your vendors to follow company approved reporting standards, whatever those might be. I need something from you every single day. We're going to talk about what you should expect in just a second, but you should be getting proper reporting. And I'm going to jump right into that now. So we talk about buyer's remorse and what happens with that. Okay, so recap and reporting. Foremost, there should be 5 things that happen every day. And Dan, I'll just stay on this point for a second, but you should be getting clear communication. You should be getting moisture mapping of your facility when you have water damages or fires. You should have accurate photo and very big photo logs. You should have a plan for what's happening tomorrow, what you need approvals on, and then we'll talk about closeout documentation. But as far as your reporting goes, know your audience, right? It's important you restore, like I said, when you partner up, we need to know, do you want a bullet point recap every day? I'm an old school guy. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I like to write the novella. I like to tell the whole story. And my clients always say, good Lord, I get an email, so many words from Rob, words. It's not for you today. It's for your mutually and materially interested parties. It's for the boss. It's for the owner of the building or the ownership group or the board of directors. Sometimes they like to read those big, long stories. I like to tell the entire story. We arrived at this time. Here's what was reported to us as the event. This is what we found. We've then pivoted to emergency response. I like to write that all out. And my recaps can be 2 to 3 pages sometimes on larger projects. Some people just like extracted water, set drying equipment, got into Unit 312. If you want bullet points, your restorer should know how you want to be communicated with, and they should always follow that. It's important because otherwise it becomes frustrating for everybody. So proper documentation, like I mentioned, moisture mapping, you should have day logs. You should have day logs showing what was done that day. You should have your photo inventory, moisture maps, and then all your consumables. That's one thing that people don't always get. We have a sheet that tells you every single thing we use on a job every single day, whether it's 2 rolls of tape, 3 Tyvek suits, 2 pair of cartridges, 1 set of booties. Those should be recorded daily as they're being used, and that should be accounted for at the end of the process. The whole goal of a restore is not only to get you right back as quickly as possible, but it's also to get you paid. And if we're not following that, you're not going to get paid. An insurance company is going to come a month later and be like, well, where's all the photos? How do we know what even happened here? You might not know what they're going to expect, but your professional restorer should. So make sure you're having these conversations and understand what their process is going to be. Okay, Dan, for critical document requirements, next point. Moisture mapping and photos, we talked about that. You should ask for a couple of reports from previous projects. There's nothing worse than someone that takes photographs and there's 50 of them in the report that are either slightly out of focus, or someone was walking when they took the picture and it's blurred that way, or someone takes a picture of a white piece of drywall 6 inches away. I don't know if that's your restroom, coffee room. I need someone to give me a distance photograph and then an up-close shot. If I'm trying to tell a story, your photo log should almost be as good as your daily reporting, so that you can go through that photo log and be like, oh, day 1, day 2, oh, this is open, now this is wet, oh, this is dry. The photos and the recap should tell the story of everything that happened. No one should have to visit that site to have a very good idea of what went on in your building. Okay, so the incident summary, what happened, categorized by water. Water has categories and classifications. We don't have time to get into all that, but where the water came from is a category, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, white water, gray water, black water. The classification is where the water went. So a professional restorer is going to tell you, if you have a sewage loss, you'll hear people say, oh my God, we had a sewage backup and the place was hammered. It was everywhere. Well, okay, that's a very subjective statement. If I say we had a category 3 class 4 loss, that is how you should be reported to your carrier and to your shareholders, your stakeholders. You don't understand that language, it's fine. We can provide all that. Your restorer should provide all that, but make sure they're working off professional language when they're dealing with your stakeholders. Okay, sorry, Dan, what's going to happen next? I don't know if I want to jump too quick between these two, but I had a couple points, Dan, that aren't up there. So let me talk about scope work and timeline. So when we do our reporting, we, at the end of every day, when you get your recap, you want to know what happened today. That's the first and most important thing. What did you do today? What is your plan for tomorrow? What's going to happen on the next day so that I can let those tenants know? Like Dan said, if certain people can't come to their offices, if places are going to be offline, if there's going to be business interruptions, you want your stakeholders, everybody in that building, to know that in advance before people show up to work and then are upset, or maybe had meetings scheduled, or maybe had the conference room scheduled and now the ceilings collapsed, right? So scope, work, and timeline. What did we do today? What are we going to do tomorrow? The next thing is, what do I need from you, right? We're going to have to ask those facility, hey, we can't get into Unit 305, and the guy that owns the pizza place hasn't been back since the flood. It's still locked. We've never been in there. I need your help getting in these locations before this turns into mold. If you end up with secondary problems because your restorer is not communicating to you what needs to go on or what they don't have access to, you might not know. You've got 30 different businesses affected in a large building, and 3 of them no one's been into, and with all the chaos, it's been 10 days. You finally go and open up, and now it's just mold everywhere, and it stinks. And you're like, how come no one's been in? Why didn't anyone tell me? It's very important that you know what is needed from you on a daily basis. Okay, Dan, can you jump to the next one for me? Work authorizations. With Dan talked quickly too about responsibilities. Authorizations, when you set up your emergency response plan or your building plan, so you guys have the playbook, we try to set up with our client many things in advance that we can always do, right? Dan mentioned the $1 million rat. We call it the $1 million rat or the $1 million mouse. If you have a life science building, they have a refrigerator that they have $6 million worth of experiments in that refrigerator that has to stay at a certain humidity, has to stay at a certain temperature. It's not somebody's soda fridge under their desk that you can unplug and slide across the room. So you should also be familiar with all those types of things. And what do we have approval to do immediately? You all know as facilities managers, a loss comes in at 4 o'clock on the 3rd of July, right? And now nobody's going to be in the office on Friday. No one's going to be in the office on Saturday. No one's going to be in the office on Sunday. We might have some people back on Monday from a long weekend. We can't wait 5 days to take action on a loss like that on a holiday weekend. If we can remove rubber baseboard, something innocuous that's not going to cause major damage more than what's happened, and we can drill some holes and do some drying, do you have asbestos and lead? Do we know that? Can we attach that or attack this project, or do we need to bring in specialty? All these things we decided ahead of time and make life so much easier. And I know Dan covered a lot of stuff on that prep work that needs to be done, but it's really true. Your life can be so much easier if we have pre-approvals to do simple things. You can move all the furniture anywhere in this building except for Suite 31. Do not touch, that's the president's office. Or we have $1 million mouse refrigerator in lab 302. Nobody can go in 302 without one of the people that work here in that facility with you. We just need to know that, and it's totally fine. But again, saving money, saving time.
If I may add, Rob, the project timeline, most restoration work should and can be done within 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
And so if your recovery company is taking a lot longer than that, not only there may be an issue with them, but it could be as a result of delayed approvals, kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah, we can dry just about anything in 3 to 5 days. If it's a classification 4, which is specialty drying, that could include brick, marble, specialty areas that are hard to access. But for most water losses, even if it's a sewage loss, we can have most building materials dried within 3 to 5 days. If someone's still saying they're drying 14 days later, they probably don't know what they're doing, or whatever engineering controls they have in place to do that drying process is not working. So yeah, if you have drying that goes on for more than a week, you should probably look into that and see what's going on. Okay, and then finally, your project closeout. I mean, at the end of a job, there's several things you want to have from every single job. You want a photo log, and I mean a good photo log. Again, ask your restorer to show you some mock jobs or some other jobs that they've done so you can get a look at it. They can always hide the name of the client and the address so that it's not, you don't want a restaurant that had a sewage loss being broadcast, but you should always have your photo log. You should have your consumables log. What did you actually use on my job? You should have all your labor logs showing who signed in, who signed out, what time, when did you take lunches. All that's going to have to be verified by a third-party administrator when they go to pay out on these claims. So photos, moisture maps, consumables, day logs, and then anything that's specialty that needs to happen. We had to open up a firewall. You're going to need to get a permit. You're going to have somebody come out here and button that up today or tomorrow. Once we're cleared, that has to get closed right away because it's a fire hazard or whatever the case may be. Those are all the things you want to have on closeout, and you want that every single time. Also with closeouts, one of the things that we talked about, where I kind of skipped over quickly when I was talking about communication, but there's nothing more frustrating than it's not today, it's not tomorrow. When I talked about doing recaps, it's going to be 6 months from now when the attorneys get involved or someone files a lawsuit and says, I don't think that they did what they were supposed to do. I cannot stand when I'm in the middle of a job and someone goes off a thread or sends me an email that says, as per our conversation just now, or just what we talked about. It's March or April, right? In October, I'm not going to go looking for an email that starts out a subject line, what we just talked about. Put a job number, put an address, and put something relevant to what the email is. I know this is email etiquette 101, but it's amazing how many times people don't follow that. And then you're trying to research old emails 6 months from now when the attorney's looking for something or the tenant's looking for something, or people want to verify that you did your job and you can't locate it. Make sure people are communicating professionally with you. I know everyone loves to text. I know that there's Slack and there's all kinds of other ways to communicate. I'm a huge fan of staying with email. Somebody leaves the company and their accounts get deleted, their phone gets wiped. You don't have their text messages. You might not have what was on Slack or whatever format. Emails are always generally going to be around or archived. So I would encourage you to stay. If you want to do daily communications via text, that's fine. Hey, I'm at the back door. Can someone come let me in? I would not allow have your restorers doing communication through text messages. Make sure anything that's legal, binding, or has to do with the job is done through the proper channels. That's really it. You want people to know how to communicate, do their job the right way, and make sure you don't get caught in the old bait and switch. If it happens to you once, it's probably going to happen again. So be wary of that. Dan, can I just share one other thing? Kylie, can I have that back for 1 second?
We have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know we want to get to questions. It doesn't matter. I'm having issues with the computer anyway. I wanted to see if I could share what I had on my desktop for that ERT, but I'll share that with folks if they want to see that later. I don't want to waste everybody's time with that. I pulled up a mock emergency response plan. And it showed things like, this is where you park at the building, and it has it mapped out. So we have these in binders. And when we get a call from a specific client to address, you can either have them in the vehicles, in your trucks, in a binder. You can email them or send them out to your folks when they're on the way to the job. This is where you park. You can only go in this door. We do not use the elevators in the lobby. We use the freight elevators, right? And other things, access codes. One of our places has a lot of artwork. They have specific pieces of art that they want dealt with immediately. I want this taken off the wall, secured in a crate, and moved off site immediately on any water damage. And there's 6 of those portraits that are in this particular building. Those are the things that really save time and aggravation if you have that done ahead of time. If anyone is interested and wants to reach out, we're happy to share a couple of those mock emergency response plans, so you can see how we set it up for our clients out here.
Appreciate it, Rob. One other thing I want to add in the project closeout is doing a quality assurance recap meeting with the vendor. The vendor should be reaching out to you and saying, hey, what worked well, what didn't work well, what can be improved for next time? And that's really the best moment to capture any improvements. So when something does happen again, remember, it's not if, but when, they follow through what they said they're going to improve on. We did talk about quite a few things today, and just as a recap, we talked about how the first 10-minute matters, and that's all about having a structured response, and that can make a big difference between a minor incident versus a major disruption. We also talked about how being prepared saves time and money. Again, facilities that plan ahead before an emergency spend 20 to 50% less on a recovery project. How accountability and transparency are key. So Rob talked about proper documentation and communication that ensures smoother approvals, insurance claims, and stakeholder confidence. We also talked about how having the right vendor can make or break your recovery. So having a fast, reliable, and transparent vendor keeps your business operational and also provides you with minimal disturbance. Having predetermined SLAs and reporting structures eliminates last-minute confusions, as well as expectations from the vendor, and the vendor knows what you need, and you know that the vendor knows what you need, so you can hold them accountable to that. And the role of an FM is critical. There's a lot that's going on. Again, you're doing everything on a daily basis, weekly, monthly. There's a lot of responsibilities, but you're also the first line of defense in an emergency. So you being prepared will help you make faster decisions, as well as really sets the tone of an efficient recovery project. So we do have guidebooks, not only about emergency response playbooks, but also around selecting and assessing restoration vendors, how to reduce your change orders. We have a ton of guidebooks based off the challenges that a lot of our property operators face. So if you'd like to have a guidebook on this topic or interested in other topics that we can provide, feel free to send me an email. You can again contact me in several ways. You can scan with your phone. This is a QR code to my link page where you can download my contact information. So you'll get my email, you'll get my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. Happy to have a further discussion, especially if there are any particular points that you want me to expound on. Again, if you want to see what other organizations are doing to be prepared, what does their response playbook look like? I'm happy to talk to you about it. I may not share it with you, but I can share with you the guidelines. We also offer other types of trainings in addition to what we just went over. And that could be everything, Rob kind of touched on it, 5 essential steps to fully reimburse insurance claims. So if you have a problem with your insurance carrier approving claims, we have a training that helps you to get over that. We also have trainings on water damage restoration 101, what your facility managers can do. We go over that on a monthly basis with a large facility management company here in the Bay Area. We also have comprehensive biohazard cleanup. So if you have facilities that unfortunately deal with that, we can offer that as well, that kind of training. We don't really have much time for question and answering, but love to hear from you. Again, if you have a question, send me an email. We can take the conversation offline. And just want to say I appreciate the IFMA Council for providing this on. Thank you, Rob, for joining me in this presentation. And thank you all in the audience. And we look forward to hearing from you. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I'll give you 24 seconds back in your day. But again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Happy to go over it with you.
just like to jump in and say a big thank you to Dan and Rob. You covered a lot of really interesting material today. As a practicing FM, I've told you, I get excited every time I hear you guys. I mean, I've heard you talk about this before, but every single time I listen to you, I hear something different. So thank you for sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it. We hope that you'll join us again sometime. Right. Thanks for everyone that joined the call today. I hope you got some really great information. And once again, we do record these. So if you want to look at it again and get information again, and if you need any information from any of the folks that presented today, please reach out to the CFC Council. We'll be happy to provide that information to you. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you all.